find out what's trending. G?
Well, you know what? Of course, State of the Union address is trending. I wanted to show you a couple of word clouds. You guys know what a word cloud is? I've got it pulled up here on my iPad. It basically highlights the president's most mentioned words. So the bigger the word, the more times it was actually mentioned in the speech. Here's another one with a little bit of a different format. So you can see America, Americans, work, help, people.
One.
Yes, a lot of the words that he used often in his speech, and opportunities also. Also wanted to let you know the top 5 peak Twitter moments from yesterday. Okay. I'll start from 5. I should start up, right? So 5 was Boehner, that he mentioned that Boehner was the son of a barkeeper that then grew up to become a Speaker of the House. So that was a very big moment. It generated 20,400 tweets per minute. Wow. The 4th peak moment was about climate change. Okay, the debate is settled. Climate change is a fact. The 3rd was about health care, of course, which we all expected. The 2nd was minimum wage, and then the 1st one was Mad Men. Okay, so this actually inspired 33,555 tweets per minute, and the most quoted Satu moment on Twitter: the son of a single mom can be president. So.
Yeah, that just gives me chills.
Right, and that was right around the Boehner when he talked about Boehner. What did you think overall? I mean, they always sound good. I mean, the president always is going to make a good speech. There was a GOP strategist and a CNN contributor that says, listening to the president is like sex. Even the worst you've ever had is still excellent. And I thought he did sound good. I mean,
the worst you've ever had is still excellent.
Is still excellent. Yeah.
Well,
is that not true, Mel? That's another show. Dan, what did you think?
I wasn't thinking about sex when I was listening to him speak, that's for sure. I mean, to me, the last 6 years has been one long-running State of the Union address. Really, we heard a lot of the things we heard from candidate Barack Obama in 2007 and 2008, closing Gitmo. I mean, he campaigned on that as a candidate for the presidency.
You're right.
The minimum wage he talked about last year. Defending the unpopular Obamacare law he's talked about for the last several years. So I'm not sure that there was a lot new there other than, his kind of one moment to say, I'm going to increase the minimum wage for this small group of workers who work for federal contractors by executive order as opposed to working through Congress.
Right. Why do you think he hasn't been able to get it done?
Well, I think there's differences of opinion on what the law should be and the role of government in a free society. And, that's why we have a robust Congress and deliberative bodies. And I would suggest that the president had 2 years where he had the presidency and control of Congress. He could have done anything he wanted. He could have spent that political capital however he wanted. And he decided to go all in on Obamacare. And frankly, that is unpopular and it's been unwieldy. And it's a real problem for this presidency going into his final couple of years.
Laura, what did you think of last night?
Well, I think he had a lot to make up for 2013. I mean, he laid out about 41 issues last year, and only 2 of those, the renewing of the Violence Against Women Act and the debt ceiling being raised. Outside of that, there wasn't that much accomplished. So I think it was much more measured last night. A lot of the same things that we've heard, and a lot of things that play well in red states when it comes to college aid, pre-K and child care, and minimum wage, and extending unemployment insurance, because the Senate this November is really where it's at. And if the Republicans gain 6 seats net, they're going to take control of it. So I think he really tried to play to those red states with those issues. And, that pen that signed the minimum wage for federal workers now has its own Twitter page and Twitter handle. So it'll be interesting to see how much he wields that pen this year, because as much as it's a divided Congress, it can't be dysfunctional. And I think that's treading a fine line.
Well, what did you think of last night?
Yeah, I think he was surprised that I don't think this is his best format. I mean, he's obviously a great speaker. He's great when he's, like in a factory, he's rolled up his sleeves. He's got that sort of, everyman kind of thing about him and great energy. But when he gets into this deal and you got the 2 guys sitting behind you, and that's always the worst optic of this speech, right? You got
so distracting, isn't it?
There's one guy who always looks angry, and then there's one guy who always looks, Biden.
Or nods off.
Biden looks drunk all the time. He's never had had a drink in his life.
Oh, gee, here come the emails.
But anyway,
here come the Facebook, baby.
But then and we know what's really bad though too is they have written that the speechwriter was actually pretty good here because he wrote a couple of applause lines that he knew were going to focus Boehner sitting down instead sitting on his hands. And if you're only kind of half listening to the speech, one of them was it was about health care and it was about pre-existing conditions. And the president ends on you know, we fought for pre-existing conditions, and then you see the speaker just sit on his hands and everybody else jumps up, and it seems like, you know, it casts Republicans in a bad light there, and obviously that's very, very intentional. It's really an interesting mechanic that they use. Laura, as I'm sure, is aware of this. Here's the other thing, though. He's not great in this moment because the stage is almost not where he's comfortable at this kind of level.
I disagree. How can you not say that he's great? Ryan just said, like, he's an orator.
It wasn't a great speech. Did you think it was a great speech?
Yeah, I did.
Really?
I did. Yeah.
How many times were you not off last time?
Well, let me tell you something. I did it the old-fashioned way. I listened to it in the radio because I was coming from an event downtown. So I listened to 780 all the way home, and there were times, I mean, it was narrated, and I listened to it. I thought it was great. I didn't have any problems with it.
That actually brings up an interesting thing from the past. JFK and Nixon, when they had the first televised debate, those listening on radio said that Nixon won. Those watching on television said that JFK won. I think there is a difference of opinion whether you're listening or watching.
Well, sure, and people a lot of times see what they want to see, too. Of course, Democrats are going to see it one way, Republicans are going to see it another way. I think I'm more in the middle, but I thought that he was a good speech, but I do agree with some of the things that Dan said. I mean, it was a call to action. He says he's going to do things without Congress. We have been hearing a lot of things that he wants to do, and I think he genuinely wants to do them, but they're not getting done, and a lot of that is because of the bureaucracy and the separation in our Congress.
Well, for me, I personally thought, watching it and listening to it, that I thought it was very determined, but I also thought it was very tempered. It was interesting how he was very inclusive in the speech. He reached across the aisle, but at the same time, he also made that bold statement of, yes, I will, if I have to, go it alone. And I think he understands that, you know, things are kind of winding down for him, but yet the president still has a lot of power. So he does realize that, you know what, the executive power is big, and I'm going to do whatever I can without whether you help me or not. So that was very interesting.
Is that realistic, though? Is that realistic? It's not.
It's not at all. Yeah. Because the minute he starts to do that, then Congress will slam down on him, and they can run against him very easily on that. The guy's run away with his pen. You know that these are sort of dictatorial moves as opposed to an inclusive move. And some of these, all right. For example, as Dan pointed out, this thing about the minimum wage, it affects about 15 people essentially. I mean, this is a very small thing. What they need to do is they need to have a debate and a real debate about raising the national. But isn't he trying to just set the
example so that others across the nation will follow suit? Isn't that the whole point? And let me ask you this one question real quick before we get, because we're going to get to a soundbite. We're going to show folks that in particular. Just a question to you all. And let's just take the last 2 decades. Have any of the presidents over the last 2 decades been fought more by Congress than this president? I'm just curious.
2 decades. Well, I don't think. Yes, Bill Clinton, for sure. Laura can talk about that. I mean, he had a lot of
problems. As much as President Obama?
Yep.
How about the last 2 years of the George W. Bush administration after they lost Congress? I mean, go back to Reagan and his fights with Tip O'Neill when Democrats had control of Congress. And this is endemic to our politics.
That Reagan had with Tip O'Neill as well, because they had a friendship, and he invited him down to the White House, and they had a conversation, not always discourse. I think it also depends who's in charge. I think Barack Obama should have had Boehner and Mitch McConnell down a lot earlier than he ever did, but I don't think that this is any different than other Congresses. LBJ had to get the Civil Rights Act through a Congress with Southern Democrats that were pro-segregation. So this is something that's ongoing. You have to learn how to deal and to create partnerships to get things done. Everybody's got that problem.
Well, let's take a look. Before we get to that minimum wage, but let's start taking a look at some of the things. So there were some highlighted moments that we thought were very important. And we're going to start out where the president was talking about inequality wages. Take a look.
Today, after 4 years of economic growth, corporate profits and stock prices have rarely been higher. And those at the top have never done better. But average wages have barely budged. Inequality has deepened. Upward mobility has stalled. The cold hard fact is that even in the midst of recovery, too many Americans are working more than ever just to get by, let alone to get ahead.
Dan, what do you have to say?
Right. Whose fault is that? Who's the president of the United States? I mean, it's these.
But Roach said he can't do it alone.
Well,
he's back. He needs help from.
It's these dissociative episodes. He's an innocent bystander to his own presidency. He's describing something that he's not a part of. Here's the problem. You've got 48 million people in this country on food stamps. You have more than 100 million able-bodied, working-age men and women who are not in the workforce. We have 2 million fewer jobs now than we did before President Obama took office. And on his signature achievement, Obamacare, we have the same number of uninsured today as we did the day he took office. So he is right about stagnating wages. He is right about the loss of opportunity for middle-income families and middle-income families who aspire for more. But it's his policies that are responsible for the problems he describes.
And stagnating wages. Stagnating wages are part of a grander economic issue, too, by keeping interest rates low. I mean, they're trying not to have a situation like they had in the 1970s, where you had unemployment and inflation simultaneously, and the Fed has been very, very careful about making sure that doesn't occur. So I think Dan's making an excellent point, that he's complaining about stuff that really is in his control, but executive order is a really dangerous thing. You do too much by executive order, and Congress, the Senate, even his own Democratic Senate is going to turn on him for doing that.
But hasn't the turn already happened? I think that's what I keep missing here. Hasn't the turn already? It seems like look what he was handed coming into office. Former President Bill Clinton even said no other president had to come in and fix what President Barack Obama had to come in and do. He said it out of his own mouth. So it's like, does he get any credit for coming in on the low and trying to climb up?
I think he did for the first 4 years and got reelected, but it's really tough to blame the Bush administration when he's now this far into his second term. You can't just look in the rearview mirror anymore, and you really have to own it. Well, now, you can say, I first had to reverse this, and now we're start moving forward, but you got to own it.
Well, I mean, acceptance of responsibility is not the same thing as avoidance of blame. Those are not synonymous. And he's very focused on avoiding blame. There's not a lot of rhetoric that goes to acceptance of responsibility. And frankly, since he's so interested in equality and the members of Congress that are these income equality hawks, they want to count my money. Well, let's count their money. Why don't they lead by example? A member of Congress makes $175,000 a year. The president makes $400,000 a year. Why don't they reduce their income to the median household income level in this country of $51,000 to be the change they wish to see according to their policy choices?
I think this well, you know, that clip that we just showed, he was talking about income equality, and I think he had a very strong message in his speech about work. Not just about opportunities or equality, but about work. And I think what he's saying is that the economy and our system right now is failing the honest worker. Why is it that money that sits in an account or in a stock market exchange can collect an exorbitant amount of return, whereas the individual who's actually doing the physical, honest work doesn't get rewarded for that work? So I think this is what he's talking about. He's talking about the fact that our system, the capitalist system right now, the way that is working with these loopholes for corporate America, who are the ones that are getting the wealthiest, is that the economy is really failing to honor honest work. And that's the inequality he's discussing.
Well, I would suggest that, as he described, the 1% have done very well under President Obama, and what he has done is taken his friends across the bridge and then blown the bridge for everyone else who's left behind. So what you have is a system that's, frankly, based on rent-seeking, that it's about currying favor with the government. It's about your political clout. It's not about the quality of the good or the service that you provide. And so the 1% who can game the system do very well, and to your point, the people that are the workaday people trying to scrape by or trying to move up, honestly, don't have the same opportunities, but it's because of big government. So big government is the problem, but we're led to believe that big government is the solution to the problems they create. I don't understand the logic of that.
But I think government can be an ally to the honest worker in the same way that tax breaks are such an ally for corporate America.
Yeah, I really do.
On that note, I got to take a short break here. I will say this: a CNN poll, 44% of respondents said had a positive response of the president last night. 32% somewhat positive. 22% did not like it at all. We're going to talk more about it and have the Republican rebuttal when we come back after the break. More host chat. Stay with us.